Hello, hello. Welcome, good people of the Instagram world. Talk this time with Mr. Solomon Abrams.
There you go.
There we go. There we go.
There we go.
Perfect.
Good
Perfect.
deal.
So glad you're joining us today, Solomon.
Thank you. So I'm so glad you invited me. Thank you.
You know
Thank you
how
for
we
having
do. Welcome, everybody. We're going to get some time for folks to join. If you are coming into this conversation and you have questions off top that you want to make sure that we have some space to address, you should, based on this new update that I just installed 2 days ago, have a fancy question mark on your screen somewhere where you can ask a question and we can look at it and share it and address it, all those things. This conversation is about consent and rope. This is part of the initiative Trauma Informed Consensual Kink, having these live discussions all month long with Black practitioners who are intentional about incorporating trauma-informed approaches in their kinky work. So yes, if you would just drop your questions in there. Trauma-informed consensual kink. I just want to just make this disclaimer. This is the birth of a community of practitioners and experiences and wisdom and knowledge and identities and traumas and histories, right? And it's important to mention that because while we are offering this framework out into the world, we want to make sure that it is very clear that this framework has been informed by many, many people within the community. Not only have I been very intentional with consulting with folks who I know have been doing this work for an extensive period of time, and even folks who are new to it and have their own ideas and new concepts that they want to bring to it, but also the folks who supported this work have been consulting out there in the streets, asking questions, interrogating their own practices, bringing it back to the center. So I wanted to make sure that that was in the forefront of this particular live and every live henceforth, and also that the trauma-informed consensual kink training that we're hosting at the end of October will consist of folks just like that, just like that, in that space. And we want that to be a learning and collaborative space that we share information and knowledge, because that's what it is. That's really what it's all about. That's really what it's all about. So disclaimers, we do have some more spots open for the trauma-informed consensual training, but they are going very, very fast. Thank you for all the shares. The energy behind this framework is what's most exciting. And without further ado, one of the folks who has been a catalyst of that energy and the conversations, I swear me and Solomon have had hours upon hours of conversations about TICK, is none other than Solomon Abrams himself, the notologist. Yeah. You know what I mean? So Solomon, look, let's just jump right into it. If you would, just tell the people a little bit about like what your practice is, who you are, you know, first, what your practice is, and we can get into the rest.
Man, I have to get better at this part. I am a service. I am a service top, a rope service top. I provide rope services with intimate macrame. As Coach said, I'm a knotologist, a self-proclaimed knotologist, and I work with various people to help them experience rope and work out different levels of energetic, emotional things based on their relationship with rope. And we do that using some holistic practices like vibrational healing, breath work, affirmations, and guided meditation, to name a few.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I do.
That's what you do.
That's what I do.
I mean, that was a very eloquent way to describe what you do, and because it is an art form. Because I'm sure for folks who have been through our Instagram stories, who have seen some of the work that you do, they may have a bit a bit more language
Yeah,
around how it affects them and impacts them to see black folks.
right. Black folks, not like kind of black, not like black folks, black folks.
Black folks
Right.
engaging in role play.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. And so
yeah.
it does come. It's there are. I'm still finding that every day there are people who introduce themselves to me who don't know that black folks engage in rope and intimate macrame, um, who are tying each other up, who are suspending each other, who are using rope in different various kinky ways. So it lets me know that we still have to. That there's still more work to be done. That on a business level, there's still more people I can market to and talk to and help and can be helped by their presence and energy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Word, word. Uh, so this is the chance that I want to make some space to acknowledge that we are talking about trauma. We are talking about consent. We are talking about rope. Neither one of us are therapists, so we are coming
Not
to
at all.
this conversation as practitioners working with people who may or may not have experienced some form of trauma
Correct.
in their life.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so Solomon, I'm thinking about what are some unique characteristics about rope, specifically that maybe not make it a little bit different, but what are some specific characteristics and considerations about rope um, that you've witnessed in your practice that have been impactful?
Well, thank you. Thank you for asking me. That's a very unique question. I like that question. So, some things that are very unique to rope as it relates to trauma is, first of all, a lot of people aren't aware of all of the things that rope may entail. The rope isn't and what I consider an active kink at all times. So the plan may be to do suspension, but once I begin to tie rope on a person, the rope is on you until we take that off. And so what if a person has experienced some sort of trauma, it's one of the things that's kind of likely is that they were restrained in one way or the other. Maybe not physically restrained, but maybe um, implied restraint or implied confinement, things like that. And so it's it kind of we have to redefine what some of these things are, and we have to redefine what consent means. As that you may know, okay, Solomon's going to tie me up. And I'm giving him permission to tie me up, but there's another level of things that since they don't know the effects it'll have on their body. If they haven't been tied up or haven't had the opportunity to discuss how they would like to be tied up, we have to have a different conversation about what we're mutually going to do together. And
Mm-hmm.
it's one of the things I find that people come to me and they feel really empowered to have safe words. And I'm not against safe words, but what I usually tell my clientele or the people I work with is that if I tie you up and you're suspended and you scream red and I stop tying you, that does not alleviate what's going on with you. That does not alleviate the issue.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to have a different level of conversation. And so oftentimes as it relates to someone who may have experienced some trauma before, and that trauma may have been something along the lines of they told the person to stop and they wanted that person to stop immediately, and now they may be experiencing something that during our sessions that they may feel like their power is being taken away, and we have to discuss ways for them to start walking back that power return to them. And so in those cases, I may say to them, if I do something that you don't like, tell me in no uncertain terms the best way you can, and I'm only going to ask you what would you like me to do next, and I'm going to begin to do the things that's going to make you feel safe or at least be safe. You may not want me to tie you up. I'm going to bring you down to the floor. I'm going to give you space. I'm going to make your safety my concern. And so oftentimes that doesn't, when you seen, you doing impact, if somebody screams red or there's a slight mistake, there may be a slight, your aim is off. You can stop that or correct that right away. But if the rope isn't correct early on, it can get worse upon worse upon worse. And those things may trigger something that they didn't know was going to happen. I didn't know was going to happen. and we have to start figuring out ways to do right by that. Also, some of the things we use to remove rope in an emergency can be really triggering. Like I use a marlin spike. This is a large spike. If a person was attacked and that other person used a knife, we wouldn't have had a conversation about that unless I say, hey, if something happens, I'm going to use this to remove the rope. I may not be, they may not be the best thing. So sometimes I have to think of all of the things, right? I have to think of all of the things that, since I know they don't know, and I have to think of some of the things or encourage them with a conversation where they get to a point where they're asking questions based on the things that they didn't know that they don't know. And
Right.
and we often find ourselves discussing some possible traumas or some triggers in ways that, like I say, over a while, it's been my experience that they call me for a consultation. They may be thinking we're just going to talk about how they're going to be sexually aroused or not aroused. But as we start talking, they begin to tell me about different possible traumatic experiences, or they'll just say, hey, this thing happened to me. And it's like, okay, well, one, we both should know that, right? And thank you for that. Thank you for trusting with that vulnerability. And two, here are some things that we're going to do to help mitigate that happening. I can't tell you 100% that nothing will happen. What I can say is, if things happen, here is how I'm going to act, and I'm going to do these things that are in your best interest, and we're going to work our way back from there.
Yeah. 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 Wow. Oh, you said a mouthful. You said a lot. I was over here taking notes because, okay, so the first point that I want to reiterate is you bringing up that saying red while you're suspended in rope doesn't can't necessarily equate to the immediate
Right, correct.
ceasing of the activity, right? The rope is still on the body, even if you let them down, still having to get the rope off. But this other part of, even if you're coming to, get someone out of the rope, your instrumentation could possibly be possibly traumatizing or triggering for the person who has the rope on them. And that's what, and really that's what this work is about, as practitioners. Folks may not always disclose like what happened or details, and we also have a responsibility to not necessarily like pry for the details, and we need to know how this could potentially contribute to the way you communicate, to the way you show up in distress, to what may be possibly triggering. That if you would need to know then if scissors or a knife, or your spike or something else, right, would elicit some feelings of safety.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's huge.
And while you're speaking, I was also, one of the things I kind of learned in real time that is that can remind someone of a traumatic experience, right, is my tone of voice. And I realize that because I'm Black, sometimes I can speak very passionately, or I can speak in a voice that may be a little bit more authoritative than that's needed for the moment. And that has helped me during those negotiations and those conversations, those connection conversations. I realized that sometimes I have a way of speaking that can be off-putting, and that can be one of the I want to say like a gateway towards being re-triggered.
Like discomfort, yeah.
So there are times where I have to take a breath and announce, like, okay, let's take a moment. Let me apologize. How I'm sounding isn't the way I want to be taken. And I would like to let you know that it is not my intention to sound this way, and use words like, here's how I'm feeling, and the reason I feel the way is because of this. And I realized as a Black man that there are times where that I have to handle things a lot differently, because if we're going to go, let's say statistically, that the likelihood of the person I'm speaking to, if they were harmed or they had a traumatic experience or they were something like that, there was probably by someone like me, a Black man who thought he was doing right, who thought what he was saying was the best thing. And I have to be mindful of that and say, well, I'm not upset, I'm passionate, but I'm going to tone my words down and let you be heard. and I'm going to do more active communication instead of just saying what I want to say and trying to sound as if I'm some super authoritative figure. I'm not the authority, the authority on the person I'm talking to. I just may be the authority of what we're talking about in this moment, but that doesn't supersede their feeling of safety because they want to do the thing. And ultimately, on some levels, I want to do the thing, but it doesn't help if I'm seeing them. I've watched people, my voice booms in spaces, or if we're in close proximity, my voice going up can feel like a physical boom, and I can see that sometimes. I have to be aware of that. I have to be aware that how my words are being felt, heard, and received, and so that it's not triggering and it's not off-putting.
Right, right. That's a word. That's a word. I see that. I see Dave Sadie left a comment and his perfect transition into some of the questions that I had to ask that we actually talked about before we got on this live. Was so Dave Sadie mentioned. I appreciate that he mentioned the consultations. Can you talk more about the importance of consults before play? We talked, so before we got on this live, we may not share the story that was shared because that's our story.
Right.
Okay. But but we've one of the ways that it shows up, like how we can engage in a practice of space, right, which is the safety, pleasure, awareness of ourselves, the environment, the circumstances, the power dynamics, communication, and empathy that we create space is by making time to have conversations that are poignant, felt, and cover bases around safety, and not even bases around safety, like share about who we are to each other outside of what you catch on Instagram, where it seems like plucking through and just assuming that, oh, truly, if you're kinky, right, then this is something that you want to do to me. So, so in the conversation with negotiations and consultations, what excuse me, what would you say would be, like, let's say three of the top things that you would discuss, not to prioritize these things, but particularly with rope, three of the parts of the conversation that you found to be not only important or missing, right, when people approach you to work with you.
Okay, so I'm gonna give the acronym I use for that is ICE, right? Intention, connection, and environment, right? And so we discussed, first of all, what's their intention? And that leads us to expectations. One, what would they like to get from, what is their intended goal for this session with me? If their goal is to be tied up, there are bunches and bunches of people who can tie you up. What do you need? What is that? Why am I the person that you want to tie you up, right? And what do you expect to happen? What do you expect from this, right? Oftentimes, a lot of times people say to me, we're just going to go with the flow. No. We're not going to go with the flow. What we're going to use, we're going to set our intentions and use the flow to get us to a predetermined destination, right? That's one of the first things we want to discuss. That's one of the first things that people come, and I find that they have no intent. They just saw something, thought it was cool, and no one told them that when you start into a kink scene, that you should have some sort of intention on what you want to get from it, and then tell me what your expectation. Because I may not be able to meet your expectations, or more importantly, I may not want to meet your expectations. You may expect something of me I don't want to do, and yes, I'm not going to put up a sign reserve the right to refuse business. I'm a person. We have to have consent from each other. That's mutual, right? And so, because you came to me, don't mean I want you to come to me. So we have to have a conversation, right? And so we set intentions, and they set their intentions, I set my intentions, and so we have a mutual understanding of what we both are intending to do, and then we have some expectations based on that. Second C is you say consent and connection. with rope, I tell people where I stand at, what my kukumu is, right? What my with what I get out of it, right? And kukumu is clear understanding and mutual understanding. I need them to know what I get out of it. They often ask me like, so what do you get out of it? I'm glad you asked. I'm a self-proclaimed connection hoe. I like having some levels of connection. That's why rope is not. I like doing rope, and that's why I state up front that if I have to be connected to you in some way, that I have to have something for that, right? Whether it's if you're gonna give me money, if I have to endure being connected to bad energy, I need something for that. But we're gonna understand that we're going to be connected to each other, and part of that, we start talking and getting consent from each other. I let them know you can bring someone to watch over you because you may be your safety, but I don't necessarily always consent to that person being their intimate mate, because oftentimes people don't communicate what they don't know what's going to go on, so they can't communicate that to a partner. And so since we're connected in this scene, their partner may misinterpret what that connection means. So if a person tells their mate, I want to only do rope with somebody that I trust and know what they're doing, okay, you can convince your partner that this person on Instagram knows what he's doing, but that level of trust, how can you gain such a level of trust with somebody without some kind of, you can't. So sitting watching do a thing and you see that connection, is like, oh, they've been fucking, right? So we have to have an understanding. We have to have a clear, concise, consented understanding that you can bring the girlfriend who got the knife in her bag, and if I do something wrong, she's gonna start cutting. You can bring your loud friend. You can bring your crazy friend. You can bring, if you want to bring your boyfriend, you have to understand that there's a connection that we gonna have that he may see and may not like, or your partner, she may see and she may not like. We both have to understand that, right? And so that's where understanding what the connection means and what having consent for that means, right? And lastly, I say energy and environment, right? We're going to create an energetically charged environment, and we both have to understand what that means. For me, what that means is your emotions, that energetic environment may have your emotions do something different than what you intended. You may not have intended to do the ugly Viola Davis cry. That may not be your intention, but here you.
Man, Viola Davis cries beautiful, Sally. It's
Beauty,
it's felt.
ugly, don't they can be the same thing.
I know. I know. I was ugly crying last weekend.
Right,
Yeah.
right. They cry because they truthful. You ugly cry, you really for real. You can't
Yeah.
ugly cry.
It's a full commitment. It's a full commitment. Yeah.
Right. Now, if a client of mine comes and has on their nice lingerie, they smelling good, and their hair good, and their fingers and toes done, and they done remove some hair in certain places, they did not intend on ugly crying in front of a dude in a bow tie and a thing, right? But that may happen. And so we have to understand that the environment is set to accept all that energetic outcome, and that we're going to have a response for that if that happens. It doesn't end the scene. It just kind of changes what we're going to do. And we use that based on our intention and the connection that we've already built. And we build those things we get an understanding for those things during the negotiation, consultation, conversation up front.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Hey. Rope is some power. Rope is some really powerful stuff. It's some really powerful stuff. Not even just because it is a form of bondage and restraint.
Right.
Like that already comes with some level of discomfort.
Correct.
Top. Can you still hear me? I think my Bluetooth.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Check this out. My Bluetooth bad.
Okay.
But then there's this other level of trust.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you mentioned this again, this part about connection.
Correct.
That happens with rope. I can't remember the study that I ran across. I want to say it was Tarsha who released it. And they were saying that rope play was the most dangerous type of play that Kinksters participated in.
I can see that.
Largely because of restriction of blood flow, like tying it correctly, tying at wrong points, tying too tight, not having good conversations around whether that's mobility,
conditions that a
Mm-hmm.
person may have,
Mm-hmm.
you know, there's a lot to
Correct.
consider, especially when it comes to
Correct.
suspensions. And then this other layer
Correct.
of like we're like the reason that someone wants to get tied is because they want it to be a pleasurable
Correct.
experience, not to feel fucked up at the
Right.
end,
Right.
not to,
Right.
you know, lose blood flow to the fingertips, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
not to pass out. And so like participating in rope and attempting to move towards pleasure while also being in a very, very dangerous
Mm-hmm.
type of situation. Um, it hits different because safety, I feel, is defined so much
Mm-hmm.
differently. How can you be safe? Like you said, how can you be safe when you can't
Mm-hmm.
move, you can't walk, you can't escape, you're put all your trust in this other
Mm-hmm.
person to help facilitate this interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows, you may have a cathartic release in
Mm-hmm.
the middle of it and you want to release safely, but you ain't cried in front of nobody in 5 years, right? Like it just feels like on the spectrum of risk
Correct.
and calculating risk, it is one of the riskier forms of play.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for saying that. I didn't want to be the person to say that, but it is, right?
Yeah.
It is. And so when we start speaking about trauma, right? We start speaking about that. There are the things that like that I have to be aware of and help them be aware of it. So that's why there are times where people don't know they should tell me that, hey, I get car sick if I spin, or I have asthma, or I have diabetes, I have low iron. What else? Oh my
I
God.
had a shoulder
Right.
injury, my knee.
I,
Yeah.
I have a grass allergy. Okay. You know, things like that. Because, or a lot of times people associate kink with the sensation they mostly associate with is pain. And so if when I say to them, yeah, if something happens, you should let me know. Oh yeah, I'll tell you if something hurting. Okay. But what if something suddenly goes numb?
That's not hurt.
Right. You may think, okay, this is happening. Oh, my left foot or the toes of my left foot are numb. I can't really feel them. That's nothing because it's not pain. No, that could tell us about a circulation issue. They could tell us so we have blood, like we have veins, we have arteries, we have airways, right? And what restricts those things? You can end up with nerve damage.
Right.
And since you don't know what you don't know, how you place your hands is important. So I have to have different conversations because some people have this natural urge to when you're trying to tie them up to fidgeting and become escape artists. But it's like, hey, listen, that can be dangerous for you. If you fall, I'm gonna be okay. If you fall, like I got us on the rope, but you fail, I'm gonna be okay. You're gonna be very embarrassed, and my reputation may take a hit, but you're gonna probably hurt before I do. Let's not do these things to place yourself in a place of detriment, right? And so when you start understanding that how you have to do that bad placement of rope or not paying attention to someone, there are a lot of bottoms or submissives or receivers of these kinks that think that just going to this numb subspace where they're blissed out and they're nearly unconscious is the greatest thing ever for them, and that's dope. However, I need you cognizant. I need you to be able to. I need you able to. If I'm going to reduce my way of speaking. If I ask you direct yes no questions, I need you to answer me. If you know, and I need you to be aware for your safety. I need you to have some level of awareness, right? And so that goes back to sometimes they don't know what they don't know.
Right.
And the unfortunate part is there's a good group of us, if we say in the country, there may be 10 of us who who go a little bit further in depth, and we tell you, hey, let's take this conversation a little bit further before we do anything, right? There aren't that many, let's say, that people may overlook right and proper information because it's not fun to hear that, hey, listen, you may, if you way or that injury you had back in high school, that's a trick bum knee, may prevent you from doing a certain pose or a certain position. That's okay. We can do a different one. But if I didn't communicate that I knew better, you could be in a world of hurt if you just stuck to what we negotiated on. Well, you agreed to it. You didn't know what you were agreeing to. You didn't know that
Right.
hadn't been lifted in the air in a long time. You wouldn't know how your back feels or how your limbs feel when your hands are tied a certain way, your sides spinning around, and I'm playing singing bowls, and I'm giving you affirmations, and I'm doing all these things, right? And so that definitely makes it dangerous because those things happen during the scene, and then later on, people have, you have that drop, but sometimes it's like a roller coaster. There's a rise up before the drop, and so they do. For example, if they do a scene with me on a Monday, I'm going to check on around Wednesday or Thursday, like, hey, how you doing? Because you may have the words that you didn't have. You may now be able to describe something that you weren't able to describe before. Or if there's an injury, that injury may start showing itself now. Like, hey, if my body parts are a little bit sore and numb, well, tell me about that because you still don't know what you don't know. Hey, let's look at that. What happened? Well, I had some, like a little burn, but it was nice. Okay. If you don't mind, send me a picture of it and make sure what you're looking at is okay. Do you bruise
Well,
easily?
I need to refer you to some other source of
Gotcha.
healing.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm not a doctor. I'm not a therapist.
I'm not a doctor.
Yeah,
But if it starts looking a little crazy,
I'm a combat
this may
medic.
not be
I can see a few things. I'm like, hey,
yeah.
you should go to the doctor for that.
Yeah.
Put something more than ice on that, right? And so we have to, and since rope is such, like it's one of the more dangerous kinks, we have to, I take it serious in a different level. Like, for example, I don't like to joke about things that are trauma based and just like, I don't mind telling a bad joke, but if we sitting across from each other, we gonna rope together. They often ask me, "You're not gonna kill me, are you?" I joke a little bit like, "Yeah, since you asked that, I can't because that goes against the serial killer code of America." But like, no, of course, I'm not gonna kill you. Like, why would you even ask that? Like, who? Even if I were, I'm not gonna tell you that. Like, let's not get that in your head. Let's not even make that a thing that we joke about. Am I gonna kill you? I am not gonna kill you, right? You gonna let me get out of this rope? Yes, I am gonna let you out of this rope. Absolutely gonna let you out of this rope.
I like that you answer the question though.
Yeah,
Avoid the question because it comes up as straight up anxiety.
Yeah,
all right, like
and that's how trauma, because I found out, like, sometimes people come to me and I may not be their first rope experience. I may not be the person giving them their first suspension, but sometimes they ask me a question and then I'll say, no, who does that? And they'll say, well, I did rope with this person and that person, and these are the things that happen. Okay, then we need to stop, right? Here we go. I'm not going to do those things. I'm not going to touch you in a way that you don't want. I'm not going to attempt to have sex with you in any kind of way if that's not what we're trying to do.
You do not have to be naked.
You do not
just to participate.
have to be. Listen, if you rope with me, you don't have to be naked. If you do photos with me, you don't have to be naked. Now, if you say that you want to be naked, that changes some things, but you don't have to be naked. Be clothes, be dressed comfortably, but you don't have to be naked. You don't have to be naked.
I am Miss D says, I am Mrs. D says tone is very important. I didn't realize that I avoided folks because of their tone without knowing more about them.
Right.
Adding negotiations around tone is helpful. That's real. That's something I contend with too, because my tone can hit, it can land, it can feel absolute. And that's kind of the word that I land on. Is it can feel absolute, like I've made up my mind.
Correct.
And I have to try to create openings so that I can receive. Like I want to receive back. I'm here present in this conversation.
Correct.
This is the spaciousness.
Correct.
Dean something, Natter 3 Love Trey said, may you write out the acronym for SPACE. Sure. Actually, it's coming up on one of the social media posts, but SPACE stands for safety, pleasure, awareness, communication, and empathy. And it's part of the practice framework of TICK. And this is how, these are kind of the pieces that we encourage folks to pay attention to when creating consent negotiations. I will say that based on this conversation that we're having today, Solomon, one of the pieces that stands out more prominent than the others is safety and awareness. And I can't even do it. I can't even, because I'm about to pick them all. Right.
Right. So I'm looking at them. Okay, let's go over each one of them. Right.
Yeah.
So say safety. Right.
Yeah.
We have to understand. Like for me, I take tick as a super boost to prick. Right. First, so we talking about safety. One of the things I try to I go over the equipment I'm using and why we're able to do what we're doing. What we're doing ultimately is not safe. So we have to work our mind around what is or isn't safe. For example, if you tell your friends that you're going to go to a black dude house on the south side of Chicago and let him tie you up for a few hours and have his way with you, they're going to say that's one of the top unsafe acts in the world, right? So we have to reshape our mind around what safety is. And so we talk about how to mitigate risk, right? I let them come and they're looking at this hard point, and I don't care what side they are. They all look at it and say, that can't hold my weight. Of course it can. You've seen someone on my page your size and bigger, and something a little bit more acrobatic and dynamic than you have. I'm going to give you the ingredients for safety, knowledge of equipment, knowledge of skill set, and the ability and the willingness to do the things that will save you if we get into a bad situation. I'm going to show you that equipment. I'm going to show you what my plan is. And after that, we're going to both make sure that we are doing things in the best way possible, which is the best safe way possible. You're going to come sober. You're going to come clear of mind. Sometimes there are times when people come and they come to work. They come here huffing and puffing. Like, hey, what's going on with you? I had a bad day. Did you have a bad day? We can reschedule this, because this money you're going to give me, it ain't worth you having a bad situation. And so that's how I define safety. Pleasure, once again, we have to reshape what pleasure is, because a lot of times people don't know what they don't know. So if you've never been suspended and now you've never been suspended, you don't know that rope feels like a little hug, and now you feel clear and you are at peace. The world is quiet, and you may have come for a sexual experience, but the world is so quiet for the last 30 minutes. That quietness brings you pleasure. We have to be able to see what that is. You have to be able to say, redefine what pleasure is, and we get that in conversation by saying, hey, here's what I would like to have. And this is what brings me joy. What turns you on? Being called baby girl, or being affirmed, or in this case, I want to be degraded. I want to be degraded, and I want to be talked down to and told and say some bad words to me in a very mean way. If that's what brings you pleasure, we have to understand that, right? Also, there are
not expect that. We have to understand that and not expect that as an inherent part of the interaction. I think, being able to name, like, this is the type of pleasure I want to experience. And I'm really glad that you mentioned coming to a scene and maybe not being in a sound state of mind. That reminds me of Paul, like, are you playing hungry? Are you playing angry? Are you playing lonely? Are you playing while you're tired? It's something about, like, rope especially, where, like, it's not a lot of flexibility for safety, and like potential upheavals of emotions when you're suspended in the air, right? You could actually make it worse. I'm glad you brought that to it, and the pleasure piece.
And you said something that go back to speaking of safety, right? Your physical safety is important. I'll be on the phone with someone for 3 hours. They'll say, what do you need from me? Hey, I need you to hydrate. I need you to stretch to the best of your knowledge. They'll come in thirsty and they won't have stretched. And then halfway through me telling them, I see why you saying stretch. What did you get?
Like, well, do you think you play your part?
You thought I would put up pictures of videos of me in a bow tie tying woman up to say stretch? Like, I don't know what I'm talking about. Stretch. We're going to stretch you out, right? But what was that? We said,
We went through safety and pleasure, and so now thinking about, yeah, awareness.
Awareness.
You kind of already touched on awareness in a
Right.
lot of ways, even if it's just, you know, having awareness around your own body, having awareness around expectations, right?
And okay, something I had to learn the hard way through experience. Awareness also is you have to be aware of the perceived activity from the outside world. If you activated your safety people and then we run over our time and they can't get in contact with you, you have to be aware that there may be a mob at my door. You have to be aware of these things, right?
Yeah.
You also have to be aware that you're trying to surprise your partner, and this may not be something they find comfortable. They may not want to share you in this way. So you also have to be aware. Right? So an all-around awareness. And once you start realizing, sometimes we all realize what we don't know and how much of a deficit that is in our life. That you're not aware, that you're so unaware that you're missing a big part of things in your life, right? And what we
See, communication, which fuels like the level of awareness fuels how productive the communication can be. Not even just like the negotiating communication, not even just the like the get to know you communication, but also like the energy exchange. If this is all rooted in creating connection and pleasurable experiences for each other, right? Then we have to pull in awareness and be able to talk about it, be able to talk about what we want.
I agree. And so one of the things I do is try to establish how I communicate, right? And so I tell them, for me, I try to be a straight communicator, clear communicator. And so I'm going to ask questions that you can answer yes or no, but I also understand nuance. And so give me the yes or the no first, and then let's explain the nuance of it. And then I tell them how I'm going to communicate with them during the scene. I typically have, for example, I tell them, I'm going to ask you 2 questions that sound the same, but they're very different. I'm going to ask you, how do you feel, or how does your body feel? How do you feel? We're going to speak about emotions. We're going to speak about how your non-tangible, non-physical self relates to the experience. And how your body feels. I just want physical sensations, words that tell me, or sounds that tell me good, bad, or you don't know yet, but you're trying to find out. And then I ask them, how do they communicate, right? And then we discuss what we thought was good or thought was a known way of communication, and then we just get down to it. And I tell them, if you don't communicate with me, I'm going to take you to the last level of safety that you knew, and we're gonna reset. So if you are blissed out and you don't know what's going on, and I've been trying to get you to understand, I'm gonna bring you to a point where you say, and I used to tell them, I'm gonna bring the floor up to you. I'm gonna put a chair under you. I'm gonna put a stand under you. I'm gonna put something.
I'm gonna bring the floor up to you.
To you, right? And
I love that. Yeah.
Also, but nonverbal communication, right? So I tell you, if I put my hand in your hand and you don't squeeze, or I'm expecting your body to do a thing because you can't see your hand not squeezing my hand as tight as possible. I can. I know that's not supposed to be the way, right? And then lastly, that sexual arousal communication. Because you have a physical orgasm or a sign of arousal is not consent for me to get sexual with you. That's just your body doing what your body do. But it's communicating to me one way or the other. So we're going to discuss it on the back end. But I'm going to let you know that this is how we communicate in all these ways possible. And then lastly, E, what's E?
Hey, that's empathy. That's empathy, which in a lot of ways, especially for Black folks, right? We have the shared understanding of trauma. We have a shared understanding of what it means for us to be in this culture and lifestyle. Maybe we can't understand everything, but what we can do on a very basic level is have space and compassion.
Correct.
Right. Understanding, like you already mentioned, that rope is dangerous. So we can't say same consensual this one.
Right.
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 Because safety is too ambiguous to start off with. You're coming and walking directly, happily, nipples all erect
Right.
into a risk.
Right.
Right. And we also knowing that the way that harm works,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't it hits everybody.
Correct.
Everybody has
Right.
caused harm at some
Right.
point, right? And the only thing that we can do in that is to be intentional to try to reduce harm or reduce re-traumatization. And
Correct.
part of that empathetic piece is like being understanding when folks have a particular reaction, may not be able to have particular like certain
Mm-hmm.
levels of awareness, where we as
Mm-hmm.
practitioners have to come in and sort of guide and facilitate that, um, so that they feel empowered to participate or decide not
Right.
to, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You said it. I can't put it. Can't say it no
Okay.
better. Can't say it no better than
Yeah.
that.
um, so yeah, we just went through the whole
Right.
space,
Right.
which is the
I like that.
sort of
No.
tick and practice framework with rope from the lens of Mr. Solomon Abrams, the notologist.
They're
Did I
not.
say it right?
Right.
Do I say it right? Notologist?
Notologist. That's a word I made up.
Yeah.
Fancy.
All right.
Made up for the internet.
My
But
mouth would throw another
no, it's
syllable or something else.
cool. It's cool. If you since I don't know how to pronounce it, however it sounds right. If it sounds right, it feels right.
Yeah.
Are you saying it? No, okay.
All right. All right.
I'm
Well,
not
I wanted to create some space for folks. If anyone did have any like additional questions, any thoughts to contribute to the conversation, please feel free to drop them in the comments. We're actually getting ready to wrap up in a second. So if you're gonna drop them now, or drop some love uh, in the from the conversation. Forever Aspen asks, are there traumas that riggers need to be mindful of? I think I have a clarifying question for that one. So Solomon, could we maybe address, so especially post-scene? Okay.
okay.
So Solomon, could we maybe address, because I want to be mindful, one, that we are not trauma
Correct.
specialists, right? And while we have obviously been exposed to understandings of trauma, and witnessed it in our work,
Mm-hmm.
I want to be mindful that we are staying in the scope of our own
Okay.
practice. So I will say, to reword this question, perhaps, maybe, are there particular things that come up post scene that, for you as a practitioner, that you have to be like, I have to check on that, or maybe there are certain
Okay.
patterns that happen post scene? Look, I want to share one right quick,
Go ahead.
because
All right.
I remember, so Solomon actually suspended me
Okay.
down here in Houston. Shit, how 2 years,
Yeah.
1 year? I don't know how long ago.
2 years. We wrapped up to 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. And I remember like how I prepared for this moment when I realized it was about to happen.
Right.
But it was the after for me, and I come from experience of being a fitness coach, a movement enthusiast, also as a kink practitioner, and so I was familiar
Mm-hmm.
with like drops and rises and resurrections and all that shit. But I will say, with the rope, it stayed
Mm-hmm.
longer, right? And so I also do that check-in. I'll give it a couple of days or even a week, especially if I'm playing with someone. But like, I was really surprised and exhilarated that the hug of the rope stayed there for weeks after. And every time I saw a photo or a video, it almost felt like I felt it. I felt it tremendously all over my body, just to re-witness and watch the moment. Of course, Solomon had did a little photography and videography,
Right.
put a little beauty behind the reel. You can't always not be afraid of the dark or some shit.
Right.
I thought it was And so what came up for me that I had to nurture, that I had to require some nurturing, because I was coming into that scene with very recent trauma.
Mm-hmm.
No, it came after. Yeah, but I was still in a weird space.
Right.
Yeah, something about that hug and not feeling a hug ever like that before in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Hugs from people, hugging teddy
Mm-hmm.
bears, hugging I don't know, a new cell phone or something. But that rope hug was distinctly different, and I felt my body desired to want to get to that
Mm.
high again.
Okay.
Yeah,
I like that. Okay. Well, thank you.
but it's personal. I just put in a personal story.
And to answer answer that question, once again, I'm not a trauma. I can't. There's no everyone since everyone doesn't experience the same traumas or their feeling about what traumatized them or triggered them may not be the same across the board. I would say if for a rigger, for a top, one of the things that it usually is the most common across the board is not them feeling like no one's listening to them, that what they want to happen or what they understand or what they're saying, how they communicate isn't being heard. It makes them, experience has made them feel taking their power level or down a few levels. The,
Is that, hold on, when you say them, are you talking about you or somebody else?
I'm talking about
Your shit?
I'm talking about the person being tied, but the person's question about how we're traumatized.
Oh, I thought as a top, yeah, as a
Oh,
rigger.
at the top are triggers and traumas. Everybody's still different, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's still different. Now, I want to separate how I'm receiving the words triggers and traumas. Something can trigger you, but it may not be based on a trauma. It may not be a trauma response, right? There are people who trigger me and make me angry, but that doesn't bring me trauma, right? But then I have romantic issues that I'm kind of still traumatized about, right? So I think that each person has their own each rigger has their own things that they may derive trauma from, and it's imperative that tick goes both ways and that since consent goes both ways, that you're a if you're a bottom, you have to be mindful that you can trigger someone else as well. Your energy can be triggering as well, because of course there are women types, there are women riggers, there are femme riggers, there are people who don't look like me who are tying people up in different ways. So you have to be mindful of the energy you're projecting. And so something that may be unique to riggers is they may have dropped someone before. They may have harmed someone before unintentionally, right? They may have had a situation where they thought they did everything that was right, and someone still said, "Well, you violated my consent because I wanted to be positioned one way and you didn't do it." That's a trauma, but I don't put those on the same level of other traumas and triggers, right? But we all are different. And I haven't ran into what's a trauma for me in my sessions yet. That doesn't mean that I don't have any. I just haven't ran into them yet, and I don't want to project what may or may not be mine to be on. I feel that was good. I feel that part was good. I feel like I'm gonna have to tell myself. I think that was good. I feel good about that last part.
I feel good about that. Okay. So okay. So you mean to say you haven't run up against any of your own trauma in a session?
No, a lot of so I don't have rope. I don't have traumas based on rope. It and the traumas that I have, let's say if they're mine may be based on bullying. I haven't had those traumas. I don't feel like somebody trying to pick on me while I'm trying to tie them up. It's hard. It's hard to it's hard to still try to project like power over me if I'm tying you up, because some point, at some point, every person that I've tied up, at some point, we get to a place where one cinch, and then they test the rope and they realize they can't get it. And that changes how they receive everything else after that.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm not saying I don't have traumas. I just haven't had anything and haven't been triggered in such a way based on rope bondage.
Based on rope saying. Yeah, that's powerful. So so one last question
All right.
before we go. First of all, 10 Little Piggy said, Sir Solomon, this entire conversation is why I want you to tie me up in my birthday.
Why you use that voice?
So
Why
that
you
was the only
why you use
voice.
that
That was
voice?
the only voice that was supposed to be used. Literally, that was the only voice that was supposed to be used for that. I hear you, 10 Wiggly Thing. I hear you.
10 wiggly pigs. I
Uh,
hear you. I hear you. We gonna
yeah.
talk about it later. I got you.
So my question is about how do you take care of yourself when you are working with folks who are coming to you and maybe they have some hesitation to finally get in the rope. Maybe they don't trust that the hard point will actually hold their weight. Maybe they're having some reservations about you being a black man in Chicago,
Mhm.
and they
Right,
and
right,
they
right. I got
activated the safety squad, right? And you move through an entire scene, move through the negotiation, consultations, etc. And then like after it's all done, like how do you find your balance to not be in a constant state of you know what I'm
you. Right,
talking
right, right,
about?
right.
Like that Dom, that top sort
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah,
energy.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I one, I lean on my support group, the people in my life, like my slave, beautiful Enigma, and then I keep a regiment of how to decompress or re-energize myself based on what's needed. I have singing bowls. I sage. I may go and smoke a cigar. I may go and eat. If
Hmm.
I'm feeling the way, I may go cry. I may go have some sex by myself, or
Last
I,
things by
I
yourself, Solomon.
I'm just saying, you know what I'm saying? I,
That's what it's supposed to be called. Sex by
right.
yourself.
And so what I try to assess myself and then give myself whatever care is needed after that. And I try to just keep some sort of self awareness. There are times where after scenes, a couple of it happens to me too. Days later, I'm just in a grumpy mood, and something may happen. I got, oh, you know what? Although you messed up, how I reacted to that wasn't fair to you, and I apologize. And just do those things, and that's what I basically do. And then if I can't handle that, I go to somebody else. I may do a Reiki session with someone else, go stretch, go work out, just to make sure that I am taking care of myself and making sure that I'm not taking on more than I can.
Mm-hmm. Do you
Mhm.
have any mental health support?
Um, yes. So if one, I'm a veteran, so if I start feeling myself really going to the deep end, I just make an appointment. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, my support group, we kind of lean on each other. So it may be some of our old Army buddies. And I'm the person, I'll tell you my business and not know you. So if you talking to me, if I'm that guy on the bus, if you ask me how my day going and it's a bad day, I'm going to tell you why my day is bad. There'll be about 10 of us on the back of the bus at the bus stop, and I got a car. I'm at the grocery store. Somebody going to hear these problems. And if dude at the corner asking for spare change, hey, brother, let me tell you why this, hey, somebody's going to out of me. And then I may
Go
read a
talk to
book.
somebody.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a problem with saying, here's how I feel. And I don't like that, but I don't understand where that's coming
Yeah,
from. And I just sort
yeah,
of help for advice.
yeah,
So I call people, hey, something how you doing? I ain't doing good. And so,
yeah.
but I go to people who I know who care about me and can help, or who can at least just help whether they care about me or not, that they have the capacity to help me in a way that I need help.
So gentle reminder, everyone who is still tuned in.
Mhm.
We're talking about consent and rope, and we just are wrapping up our conversation now. But just making mention of the part that Docu Rock brought up in the last conversation, like as us as folks who are
Mhm.
providing services that can be experienced as therapeutic,
Mhm.
as healing,
Mhm.
as connected, as embodied or somatic, right? We have a responsibility as practitioners to not operate in a silo, right? To be in community with other people who can check on us, offer feedback, people that will hold us accountable, right? And people who will just say, hold on, you're doing too much. You're doing too much. Pull back, take a break. Yeah, who cares for the caregivers? And it's a part of what we do to stay in, to be trauma
Mm-hmm.
informed in the first place,
Mm-hmm.
is moving back to community.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the ways that we do that, by every connection being meaningful, even if it is risky as
Fucked.
fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Solomon, for this conversation. You dropped some gems today. Please, y'all, go follow Mr. Solomon Abrams, aka the Knotologist, on Instagram. Has some really beautiful content. And we're actually going to keep the conversation going next week. And so we'll have another surprise guest. So we keeping it going through the month of September. And also the registration for Trauma Informed Consensual Kink is still open. It's going to close when the slots fill.
Okay.
And they're filling up really expeditiously, much faster than we ever intended. So shout out to that. And if you want to be a part, either reach out or go ahead and get registered while that early bird is still active. Outside of that, Solomon, thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for your wisdom. And thank you for all of the intentionality that you are bringing to rope work.
Thank you for having me. I'm humbled and grateful for the opportunity to speak with you. It's always connect and talk. I always receive that you give me. Thank you for having me this time.
Hell yeah, let's do it.
Including, I feel empowered. Thank you.
I do too. This is all I got for the rest of the day. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Until next time, y'all be well.
Y'all be good. Peace.